Now, back to our first story, where we told you that Iran's parliament speaker has said that any agreement on the revival of the 2015 nuclear deal must remove U.S. sanctions. For more on that, we're joined by Mr. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, who's joining us live from Bristol right now. Mr. Gosling, how likely do you see this happening? We haven't seen any change in sanction policies from the Biden administration yet.
Well, thanks for persisting and getting through to me live. Well done. This is, I'm afraid, we're at the situation now. Over the many decades I've been looking at the Middle East, we're now almost like the kind of end game. And I hate to use the word game, but I'm afraid it's the game theory that the United States and Israel are using in order to, I'm afraid, get a conflict going with the Iranians. And also, of course, that conflict is already raging within their own borders, or what some would call their own borders, with the Palestinian. The Israeli right simply don't want peace. They want war, and they want to use that war in order to drag the United States and the Christian Zionists in the United States in a zealot rage, a little bit like the October War back in 1974, when the Americans came to the Israelis' rescue, into such a conflict. So the Israelis, I'm afraid, are not content to talk about peace, because they believe that they can gain more from war. And of course, the main thing which is keeping that war out of the way is the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, a very important deal brokered by Biden and many of the other players in Europe, etc., which President Trump tore up. Now, there are very powerful forces, Zionist forces, within Britain and the United States, as well as in Israel, that simply doing everything they can to stop that deal being remade. And I'm afraid that's what we're dealing with right now, is a Biden administration that, although they got elected, and he got elected on the idea of actually putting that deal back together, there is some very powerful financial and military and ideological forces, I would even say maniacs, trying to make sure that deal never happens again. I mean, this is what I think most families, most ordinary people around the world, looking at this conflict, cannot believe that war is any solution to anything. But I'm afraid there is a tiny minority, both in Britain, the United States, and even in Europe, actually, but mainly obviously in Israel, in the right-wing government that we've got now, and we've had for many years, really, since the assassination of Rabin in the 1990s, that sees this as a political solution to actually create conflict. We called it in the 1990s and the 1980s in Europe a strategy of tension, and it's that strategy of tension that the Israeli government is now pursuing in order to try and stop the remaking of the deal. And actually, I believe that the Iranians are absolutely right now to say, well, we're not interested in putting the JCPOA, the Iran peace deal, back together unless the United States is putting on the table the end of sanctions, because that is obviously the economic sanctions shows the United States will be genuine about that deal, and without that, it is almost fruitless. Of course, it's never totally fruitless, but it's almost fruitless sitting down with the Americans, because you may sign a deal and then a few months or years down the line, they just tear the deal up. So those sanctions have got to be part of that deal if the deal's to really mean anything.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, live from Bristol.